Good evening, dear listeners. I am your host at Haunted Lullabies, the channel dedicated to bringing you the spookiest tales that will keep you up at night. Here, we delve into the mysterious, the unexplained, the eerie, and the downright terrifying. We take you on a journey through the shadows, exploring chilling accounts that will set your imagination alight. Our stories are not for the faint-hearted. They are for those who like to flirt with fear and for those who find a strange comfort in the goosebumps that our tales provide. We invite you to immerse yourself in the world of the supernatural, the paranormal, and the downright creepy. A few years back, my friends and I decided to embark on a cross-country road trip. The promise of adventure whispered in our ears as we sought the thrill of the open road and the mystery of undiscovered places. Our hearts were full of anticipation, our minds brimming with excitement as we set off into the great unknown. There was something deeply captivating about the open road. It was a canvas that painted itself anew with every passing mile, a stage where nature put on its grandest performances. We found ourselves driving through the heart of Texas, on a desolate stretch of highway that felt like it was miles away from civilization. The world around us was vast and empty, a sea of arid land stretching out in all directions. As the day wore on, the sun began to set, casting long shadows that danced and flickered across the barren landscape. The sky was a canvas of eerie red and fiery orange, a spectacle that held us captive in its mesmerizing beauty. It was as if nature herself was setting the stage for what lay ahead. Running low on fuel, we started looking for a place to refill. That's when we spotted it, an old rusty sign standing tall amidst the vast emptiness. It pointed towards a dilapidated gas station, a couple of miles off the main road. The letters on the sign were faded, almost illegible, but we could just about make out the words, gas station. It seemed like a beacon in the wilderness, our only hope in this desolate landscape. Intrigue and desperation led us to make a decision that we would remember for the rest of our lives. We decided to take the detour, to follow the rusty sign that promised salvation. Little did we know, as we turned off the main road and onto the path less traveled, that this decision would take us to a place that blurred the lines between the living and the supernatural, a place that still haunts my dreams. With the gas needle dangerously close to empty, we had no choice but to take the detour. As our car rumbled off the main road, the landscape began to change. The sparse, sunburnt grasslands gave way to a more desolate terrain, a place where life seemed to have withdrawn its touch. The twilight sky was a canvas of eerie red, creating an unsettling ambience that was hard to ignore. As we journeyed deeper into this forgotten path, an old rusty sign emerged from the gloom. It pointed towards a dilapidated gas station, a relic of a bygone era. The sign, battered by time and weather, read, "Last Stop Gas." An involuntary shiver ran down our spines as we approached, an instinctive response to the palpable sense of isolation. The gas station appeared to be frozen in time, untouched by the hands of progress. Its structure was shrouded in darkness, save for the neon lights that flickered inconsistently, casting long dancing shadows that seemed to take on a life of their own. The silence here was unnerving. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a serene countryside, but an otherworldly stillness that seemed to swallow all sound. As we pulled up next to the pump, a chilling breeze swept over us. The silence was abruptly broken by the creaking of a rusty swing hanging from a nearby tree, its eerie oscillation the only sign of movement in the otherwise motionless scene. The air was thick with an indescribable unease, a feeling of being watched from the shadows. We stepped out of the car, our footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. We tried to fill the tank, hoping to leave this unsettling place as soon as possible. But as we fumbled with the pump, an unexpected sound filled the air. A soft, haunting laughter, like a child playing. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we turned around, scanning the darkness for signs of life. But there was no one. As we tried to fill the tank, we heard a soft, haunting laughter, but saw no one around. A chill ran down our spines, and we couldn't shake off the feeling that we were not alone in this forgotten corner of the world. Unsettled, we decided to check the empty store, hoping to find someone who could help us. The store was a time capsule, filled with items that hadn't seen the light of day in decades. Dust particles danced in the faint beam of our flashlight, making the air thick and heavy. We could smell the musty scent of old paper, hinting at the years of stories that this place held. Our curiosity piqued. We ventured further, our footsteps echoing in the silence. We found a door at the back of the store, its paint chipped away, revealing the aged wood beneath. Pushing it open, we entered a small back room, its contents shrouded in darkness. In the corner, we saw an old wooden chest. It creaked in protest as we opened it, revealing a dusty diary, its pages yellowed with age. Flicking through it, we found entries dating back decades, written in an elegant, flowing script. As we read, a chilling story began to unfold. The diary belonged to the gas station's owner and spoke of a tragic accident that had occurred there years ago. A fire had broken out one fateful night, a fire that claimed the lives of the owner's beloved children. They were playing near the pumps, their laughter echoing through the night, when a spark ignited the gasoline. The station was engulfed in flames within minutes, and despite the owner's desperate attempts, he couldn't save his children. Their laughter, once a source of joy, was now a haunting reminder of the tragedy that befell this place. The owner wrote of hearing their laughter even after their death, a chilling echo that haunted the desolate station. He was consumed by guilt and grief, eventually abandoning the station, leaving it to the mercy of time and elements. The diary told of a fire that claimed the lives of the owner's children. As we closed the diary, we looked around the room, the weight of the story pressing down on us. We could almost hear the faint echo of children's laughter, a chilling reminder of the tragedy that had occurred in this forgotten gas station. As we read the diary, the soft laughter echoed again in the silence. It was a laughter that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. It was the kind of laughter that you hear in your nightmares, that sends shivers down your spine and makes the hair at the back of your neck stand on end. It was a laughter that belonged to a happier time, a time that was snuffed out by a cruel twist of fate. The laughter seemed to surround us, to fill the air with its eerie echoes. It was a sound that was out of place in the desolate, abandoned gas station, a sound that belonged to the living, yet it was coming from a place that was anything but alive. It was a laughter that was at once innocent and chilling, a laughter that was both childlike and ghostly. We looked at each other, the colour draining from our faces. The weight of the realization was heavy on us. The laughter could be the spirits of the children, forever trapped in the place where their lives were cut short. The diary in our hands felt like a cold reminder of the tragedy that had occurred in this place decades ago. Panic began to set in. We were miles away from civilization, in the heart of a desolate stretch of highway, with nothing but the laughter of ghostly children for company. The laughter seemed to grow louder, more insistent, as if the spirits were trying to communicate with us, to tell us their story. We could feel their presence around us, their laughter echoing in the otherwise silent night. It felt as if we were intruding upon their space, unwelcome visitors in their eternal playground. The fear was palpable, a living entity that was growing with every passing second. We left the gas station as quickly as we could, the laughter still ringing in our ears. The sound followed us, a haunting reminder of the children who once lived and laughed there. It was a sound that we would never forget, a sound that still haunts my dreams. But little did we know that our journey would lead us to a place we'd never forget, a place that blurred the lines between the living and the supernatural, a place that still haunts my dreams. We managed to get back on the main road and find another gas station, but we couldn't shake off the experience. The rest of our journey was tainted by a deep-seated unease. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, was now a reminder of the dreadful encounter at that forsaken gas station. As we drove on, the laughter we'd heard echoed in our minds. It was a chilling reminder of the tragedy that had transpired there. Each mile we covered, every new town we passed, the laughter seemed to follow us, an uninvited guest on our journey. We tried to distract ourselves, to drown out the lingering dread with music and laughter of our own, but our attempts felt hollow, our laughter forced. The joy of exploration had been replaced by a nagging fear. It was as though we were constantly looking over our shoulders, half expecting the spectral children to emerge from the shadows. Nights were the worst. The darkness outside our windows seemed to be teeming with unseen horrors. The silence of the night broken only by the sound of our collective breathing and the soft hum of the car engine. Sleep was a distant memory, our dreams invaded by the haunting echoes of the past. Even after we returned home, the dread didn't leave us. We found ourselves jumping at the slightest sounds, our hearts pounding at the mere flicker of a shadow. Our dreams were plagued by the haunting laughter and the flickering neon lights of the last stop gas. The road trip was supposed to be an adventure, a journey filled with fun and discovery. Instead, it turned into a chilling encounter that still sends shivers down our spines. We set out to create memories, and we did. Just not the kind we'd hoped for. To this day, the haunting laughter and the tragic story of the gas station children still linger in my dreams. But little did we know that our journey would lead us to a place we'd never forget. A place that blurred the lines between the living and the supernatural. A place that still haunts my dreams. The journey to the Oregon woods was filled with laughter and anticipation. It was a road trip like no other, a journey that would take us away from the concrete jungle and into the heart of nature's wilderness. The city began to fade in the rearview mirror, replaced by a panorama of towering pine trees and a sky so clear it felt like we could touch the stars. We were a band of 4 friends, each of us yearning for a break from the relentless rhythm of urban life. The cabin we were headed to was a quaint wooden structure, nestled deep within the Oregon woods, an untouched paradise far removed from the city's cacophony. It was a place where the only sounds were the rustling leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. A peaceful retreat, or so we thought. As we drove deeper into the forest, the road became narrower, and the trees seemed to reach out towards us, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The sun was setting, casting long, ominous shadows that danced upon the forest floor. The cabin came into view, a solitary structure standing defiantly against the encroaching darkness. It was charming in its simplicity, with a small porch, a slanting roof, and a single chimney puffing out wisps of smoke. We unloaded our bags, each of us eager to explore our temporary home. Inside, the cabin was cozy, filled with the aroma of aged wood and the faint hint of pine. The rooms were small but comfortable, and the fireplace promised warmth against the creeping chill of the night. As the sun set, the cabin seemed to take on a life of its own. The woods around us grew silent, the only sound the creaking of the cabin as it settled into the night. We laughed it off, attributing it to the age of the structure. Little did we know, our peaceful retreat was about to transform into a chilling nightmare. But what we encountered was anything but peaceful. A terrifying experience that would leave us questioning the boundaries between the living and the dead. Night fell, and a chill ran down my spine as whispers echoed through the dark. The whispers were as soft as the rustling leaves, a spectral chorus that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. They were impossible to ignore, wrapping around us like an icy shroud, threading themselves into the very fabric of the night. The cabin, which had seemed so inviting in the daylight, now appeared to be a living entity, its ancient timbers creaking in the wind, its doors opening and closing with a mind of their own. The hinges groaned like tortured souls, the echo of their lament hanging heavy in the frosty air. It was as if the cabin was breathing, inhaling and exhaling the cold night air, its heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of our own pounding hearts. We tried to dismiss these events, to laugh them off as the product of overactive imaginations. We told ourselves it was just the wind, playing tricks with the old cabin and the surrounding trees. But the wind doesn't whisper in unknown tongues, doesn't carry with it an undercurrent of dread that seeps into your bones. Our laughter grew forced, our jokes fell flat. The darkness outside seemed to press against the windows, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be trying to communicate something, a message lost in translation from the spirit world to our own. We huddled closer together, our shared fear a tangible presence in the room. The cabin, our refuge from the world, had become a prison, the whispers our jailers. The isolation we had sought now felt oppressive, the silence of the woods deafening. The whispers seemed to grow louder, more insistent, as if trying to communicate something. We couldn't understand the words, but the intent was clear. They were warnings, pleas for escape. But we were trapped, our sanctuary transformed into a house of whispers, and the night was only just beginning. Suddenly, the silence of the night was shattered by a blood-curdling scream. A woman's desperate cries echoed through the dense forest, piercing the tranquility like a knife. It was as if she was being chased, pursued by an unseen terror in the darkness. Our hearts pounded in our chests, a symphony of fear that matched the frantic rhythm of our thoughts. With each echoing cry, the chill of terror gripped us tighter. We were no longer mere visitors in these woods. We had become unwilling participants in a horrifying nocturnal chorus. With flashlights in hand, we ventured out into the night, drawn by the cries that seemed to resonate from every direction. We scanned the inky blackness, our beams of light slicing through the darkness, revealing nothing but the gnarled trunks of ancient trees and the endless expanse of the forest. We called out, our voices swallowed by the eerie silence that had once again settled over the woods. There was no response, no sign of the woman whose cries had filled the night. Only the whispering wind and the distant hoot of an owl answered our calls. As the hours crept by, the atmosphere grew heavier, suffused with a sense of dread that seemed to seep from the very soil beneath our feet. We decided to leave, to escape the oppressive weight of the woods and the cabin that had promised a peaceful retreat. But the universe had other plans. Our trusty car, which had carried us so far from the city's comforting lights, mysteriously refused to start. We tried and tried, but it was as if the vehicle had become a part of the forest, as immovable and silent as the towering trees surrounding us. And just like that, we realized the horrifying truth. We were trapped, with nowhere to run. The cabin was no longer a retreat, it was a prison. The once welcoming wooden walls now seemed to close in on us, the silence of the forest outside pressing against the windows like an unseen predator. The air was thick, heavy, with a palpable sense of dread that hung over us like a shroud. Our laughter and camaraderie had evaporated, replaced by a stifling silence only broken by the creaking of the cabin and our own labored breathing. The realization hit us like a punch to the gut. We were not alone. The cabin, our sanctuary, was inhabited by something else, something unseen, something malevolent. Our attempts to reach the outside world were futile. Our cell phones, usually so reliable, were now as lifeless as the cold, eerie forest enveloping us. The landline, a vintage piece of technology we had laughed about earlier, was now our last hope. But when we picked it up, there was nothing but an unsettling static that seemed to whisper unintelligible words into our ears. We were cut off, isolated, trapped. The haunting grew more intense as the night wore on. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. The doors creaked open and slammed shut on their own accord. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced on the walls. The temperature dropped, causing our breath to fog up and our bodies to shudder involuntarily. And then, the cries began again, louder this time. The desperate, blood-curdling screams of a woman echoed through the cabin, bouncing off the walls and drilling into our skulls. We huddled together in the living room, flashlights in hand, our faces pale and eyes wide with terror. The fear was a living entity, a dark cloud that consumed everything in its path. It gnawed at our sanity, making us question the reality of our situation. We were in a nightmare, a terrifying, surreal world from which there was no escape. As the night wore on, the haunting grew more intense. In the early hours of the morning, we discovered the cabin's gruesome history. The veil of the unknown was lifted as we stumbled upon a dusty old journal, hidden away in a creaky drawer. The entries were dated back to the late 19th century, and the words that danced across its old pages sent chills down our spines. Each entry was a spine-chilling narrative of a woman named Abigail, who sought refuge in this very cabin. One fateful night, as the moon hung low and the woods echoed with an eerie silence, she was chased by an unknown entity. The entity was relentless, causing her to stumble and fall to her death. The entry ended with a chilling remark, her screams still echo in the woods. As we read, the whispers seemed to grow louder, the wind outside howled more vehemently, and the cabin seemed to close in on us. The realization of being in the very place where such a horrifying event had taken place, where Abigail's life was so brutally extinguished, filled us with a primal fear, a fear that gnawed at our sanity. We decided to pack our bags and abandon our supposed peaceful retreat. We rushed around, grabbing our belongings, the whispers now a cacophony in our ears. But as we were about to step out, the car keys slipped from my trembling hands, clattering onto the wooden floor. And then we heard it. A soft whisper, as clear as a bell, right in our ears. "You can't leave." The words hung in the air, a chilling promise that sent goosebumps prickling on our skin. The whisper seemed to seep into the very fabric of the cabin, echoing off the walls and consuming the space. We stood frozen, our hearts pounded in our chests like a wild drum. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the whisper that had just rattled us to our core. We were trapped in a nightmare that showed no signs of ending. But what we encountered was anything but peaceful, a terrifying experience that would leave us questioning the boundaries between the living and the dead. A few summers ago, my girlfriend and I embarked on an adventurous cross-country road trip in our old camper van. The thrill of exploration, the exhilaration of the unknown, the freedom of the open road, it was all we ever dreamed of. The landscape was a painted canvas of possibilities, and we were the artists, ready to splash our lives with grand adventures. We had no idea that our journey would take a horrifying twist. As we drove through the desolate expanse of the Nevada desert, we saw a solitary figure by the side of the road. A disheveled man, his eyes hollow and haunted. We were miles from the nearest town and the man seemed desperate. In a moment of naive generosity, we decided to offer him a ride. Little did we know that this decision would cast a dark shadow over our road trip, transforming our adventure into a chilling nightmare. As we welcomed the stranger into our van, we noticed something unsettling about him. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, and his eyes, they were hollow as if they'd seen too much of the world's cruelty. But we were young, adventurous, and perhaps a bit naive, so we dismissed our initial unease. As the miles rolled by, the scorching Nevada desert outside, the hitchhiker remained eerily silent. He kept his gaze fixed on the road ahead, almost as if he was anticipating something dreadful. Now here's where things took a turn for the bizarre. Every time we glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his appearance seemed to change. It was subtle at first, a twitch of the lip, a furrowed brow. But then his hair would appear darker, his eyes would shift color, his face would contort into expressions of sorrow, anger, and fear. It was as if he was not one man, but many, each carrying a unique burden of their own. The air inside the van grew thick with tension. My girlfriend and I exchanged anxious glances, our earlier thrill of adventure now replaced by a creeping sense of dread. Despite the desert heat outside, a chill ran down our spines, and we couldn't shake off the feeling that we were not alone, that we were being watched. But what could we do? We were in the middle of nowhere with a stranger who seemed to be a chameleon of sorts, changing his form at will. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we continued to drive, the sense of unease growing with each passing mile. Every glance in the rearview mirror revealed a new, eerie transformation. The man we'd invited into our van was no ordinary hitchhiker. He was an enigma, a shapeshifter, a harbinger of something sinister. Little did we know the most terrifying part of our journey was yet to come. The miles rolled on, and the hitchhiker's presence grew more menacing. An unsettling, heavy silence filled the van, pierced only by the occasional cryptic murmurings from our unwelcome passenger. He spoke of unseen perils, of shadows that lurk in the corners of the road, of travelers lost in the desert's unforgiving void. Each warning was more ominous than the last, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that seemed to echo even after he'd fallen silent. His eyes, once vacant, now burned a sinister shade of red, casting an eerie glow in the dim light of the van. It was as if a nefarious spirit had taken residence within him, transforming this wayward soul into something far more sinister. The hairs on the back of our necks stood on end, a primal instinct warning us of the danger that sat mere feet away. The jovial atmosphere of our road trip had been replaced by a palpable tension. Every glance in the rearview mirror revealed the hitchhiker's hollow eyes staring back at us, his gaze never wavering. We exchanged worried looks, a silent agreement passing between us. It was time for him to leave. With a sense of dread, we pulled over to ask him to leave. The van screeched to a halt on the side of the desolate highway, the only sound in the vast, empty desert. As we turned to face our passenger, we braced ourselves for a confrontation, but what happened next was far beyond anything we could have anticipated. We stopped the van and turned around only to find the back seat empty. The words hung in the air, a chilling testament to the surreal happenings of our journey. We blinked, disbelieving, as the stark reality of the situation set in. The hitchhiker, the man of shifting appearances and cryptic warnings, had vanished into thin air. We stared at the empty back seat, the worn leather seeming to mock our confusion. The silence of the van was deafening, amplifying the rapid beat of our hearts. Our eyes darted around, searching for any sign of the mysterious passenger. But there was nothing. No trace of him. Not even the faintest hint of his presence. As the shock began to fade, we found ourselves facing a chilling mystery. Where could he have gone? How could he disappear without a trace from a moving vehicle? A cold shiver ran down our spines as we contemplated the eerie possibilities. Turning our attention back to the van, we noticed the windows had fogged up. The chill of the desert night had seeped into the vehicle, casting an eerie glow. As we squinted at the foggy glass, a sense of dread washed over us. There, etched into the condensation, were 3 words that made our blood run cold. No escape. The words seemed to be written with a finger, their jagged edges a stark contrast against the smooth glass. We stared at the message, our minds racing to comprehend the sinister implications. The van, once a symbol of our adventurous spirit, had become a chilling reminder of the malevolent presence that had hitched a ride with us. As we sat there, the words "no escape" echoing in our minds, we couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, now seemed more like a desolate trap. We were alone in the vast Nevada desert, the eerie silence only broken by the faint whispers of the wind. In the fogged-up window, a sinister message appeared: no escape. We were left to grapple with the terrifying reality of our situation. Our road trip had turned into a chilling tale of the supernatural, a story we would never forget. We were left alone on the desolate highway, our hearts pounding in fear. The eerie silence of the Nevada desert was suddenly overwhelming, and the van, once a symbol of our adventurous spirit, now felt like a claustrophobic trap. We stared at the chilling message on the window for what felt like an eternity. The words "no escape" etched in the fog as if taunting our futile attempts to comprehend the inexplicable. Our minds raced, grappling with the terrifying reality of our situation. We had encountered a presence that defied logic, a hitchhiker who was there one moment and gone the next, leaving behind only a sinister warning. The hollow echo of his cryptic words about the dangers of the road hung in the air, a chilling reminder of his menacing presence. Despite our fear, we knew we had no choice but to continue our journey. Turning back wasn't an option. We had come too far, and the thought of retracing our steps through the desolate desert was as terrifying as pushing forward. So, with a deep breath, we started the van and drove on, the open road stretching out before us like an endless nightmare. Yet, every mile we covered, every landmark we passed, seemed to bear the mark of our eerie encounter. The hitchhiker's warning had tainted our adventure with a sense of impending doom. His menacing eyes seemed to haunt us in every shadow, his chilling message echoing in every gust of wind. The thrill of the open road had been replaced by a relentless fear, the excitement of the unknown overshadowed by the terror of the unexplainable. From that moment on, every mile of our journey was haunted by the memory of the hitchhiker's menacing eyes and his chilling message. Our adventure had turned into a harrowing ordeal, a chilling tale of a road trip gone horribly wrong. We had sought the thrill of the open road, but found ourselves at the mercy of a malevolent presence. Remember, the open road is full of unknowns, and not all who wander are lost. Some are just not of this world. Thank you all for tuning in to Haunted Lullabies. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time, sweet nightmares.